just briefly to be clear, your priority from National Cabinet in relation to the gun laws, what is the number one priority for you?
I would put them all together, making sure that they operate effectively and that they're kept up to date and that they're updated for the changing threat. We live in a more dangerous world in 2025. The threat of anti-Semitism, as we have seen, is very real. Threats of other occurrences, such as the rise in the far right, which has also been identified, of course, by Mike Burgess, is also a threat as well.
So once again, we're told the real problem isn't policy. It's not immigration numbers. It's not enforcement failure. It's not the fact that the governments have lost control over who enters, who stays, under what conditions. No, the real problem, according to Anthony Albanese, apparently is, it's anti-Semitism. It's far-right extremism. This has become the default response of modern Western governments. When faced with real world consequences of legitimately bad policy, which they don't correct course on, they just change the subject. The question of violence, that's far-right extremism. Social breakdown, it's hate speech. Public anger, misinformation. It's always the same move, abstracts the problem until it no longer has anything to do with decisions made by people in power. And notice how careful the language is that he chooses. Far right, a term with no clear definition. It's got no borders. It's got no limits. It's vague enough to mean whatever is politically convenient in the moment. It doesn't describe an ideology so much as it describes, disobedience. Right? You're being disobedient. You're being far right. And if you question immigration levels, you're suspect. If you ask whether multiculturalism has limits, you're dangerous. That's a dangerous thing to say. If you notice patterns, right? Noticing patterns, okay? And if you ask why those patterns exist, you're accused of moral failure. This it's not about stopping hatred. It's never been about stopping hatred for these people. It's about preventing discussion. It's about preventing us from talking about it. It's about preventing truth. Discussion leads to conclusions. When we have conversations about this, people draw their own conclusions, and conclusions, of course, lead to accountability, which they don't want to be held accountable for. And that's the one thing political leadership, is hell-bent on avoiding right now is accountability. Accountability for the last 5 years, accountability for the last 10 years, accountability for the last 70, 80, 90, 100 years. Anyways, here's Bob Katter. He's an Australian MP. And you know what? He's very blunt in this video, and this is what we need at this moment. This is what we need. We need the truth. We need people to speak their mind, instead of being worried or afraid that they're going to be silenced. Because at this point, the truth is going to hurt. It's going to suck. It's going to be hard to hear.
I want their names because we have had a tradition of toleration. These people are not tolerating us. So you won't tolerate us, we want you out of this country, right? Because this country is fed up with your, we must be nice to everybody. Well, I'm not particularly nice to people that crossed the border, invaded another country and murdered over 1,200 people. Tick the boxes. Do they have democracy? Do they have rule of law? Do they have Christianity or some similar belief system? Do they have egalitarian traditions? Do they have industrial awards? Now, if they don't tick the boxes, they don't come here. If you have anti-Australian sentiments, then get the hell out of my country.
So no slogans, no abstractions, no moral lectures. That's just a man, one of us, stating the obvious. You know, it's if you bring in large numbers of people that are not like us, without proper vetting, without enforcement or expectations of assimilation, you're going to get problems. You know, that's not extremism. That's simply, okay, that's cause and that's effect in the most simple term. You know, but he's not inventing a new ideology. He's acknowledging reality. It's something that governments across the Western world seem increasingly incapable of doing. And, you know, that's why voices like his are treated as dangerous. It's not because they incite violence. It's because they puncture the illusion that they are trying to feed us. You know, it's an illusion that says everything is fine. We know it's not fine. Everybody knows it's not fine. Nobody believes the game anymore. It's an illusion that says, you know, borders don't matter. You know, social cohesion. You know, that's you automatically get social cohesion. Diversity creates that. You know, none of that's true. You know, we're discovering that is not real. That is a lie. You know, when that illusion breaks, the blame, it's got to go somewhere, you know, and it never goes up to them, right? The blame always goes outward. It goes towards the villains. It goes towards the far right, the populists, you know, the people that are spreading disinformation, you know, all the buzzwords. You know, anyone except the people who designed the policies ignored the warnings, dismissed the concerns for decades. You know, it's not like what I'm saying is revolutionary. You know, people have been saying this for the last 50, 60 years. Longer. You know, it's not just Australia, right? It's Europe, it's North America, it's everywhere. It's every country where leadership prefers moral posturing over telling the truth. And what's funny is that you and I are always expected to absorb the consequences. We're the ones that are expected to deal with it, but we're not allowed to ask why. And it's not radical to ask these questions. That's what honesty looks like. That's what being honest is. That's what telling the truth is. You know, that's why one group of people become framed as a problem while the actual problems continue to grow.